Hey there, friend. Happy summer. Heather Creekmore here. We're in June, and we're just going to take the conversation back to basics a bit today. Today, I'm talking to my friend Stacy Reaoch, who is author of a new book called Beautiful Freedom. And we're just going to have a conversation about what does the Bible really say about body image and aging and the kind of beauty we're supposed to pursue. I think you'll find it encouraging, especially if summer is beating down hot like the sun on your body image issues. And hey, if that's happening, will you go make sure you've got my 40-day body image workbook? Now, I know some of you are like, I don't do workbooks, and you're expecting it to be kind of like a blank book with lots of spaces. Let me tell you, friends, it has more words than most regular books. You can just read it through like a regular book if that's your comfort area. But I would encourage you to read it through like a regular book and then maybe go through and answer those questions, or better yet, go through and answer those questions in the community with our 40-day body image workbook reading challenge, which will start again in the fall. So grab the book, read it this summer, and then get ready to really dig in next fall. Let's get to today's interview. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel His love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Stacy Reaoch, thanks for being on the Compared to show today.
Thanks for having me.
So I invited you on because you have a brand new book out. And it's all about body image, and there's some aging stuff in there as well. And you should know that there's a lot of body image books I don't like. I'm normally pretty skeptical when I get one because I feel like a lot of them skip over the gospel and just want to add Bible verses to their diet plan. But yours was not that.
Oh, I'm glad.
I loved it. So can we just kind of start off the conversation today? I mean, if you're talking about body image stuff, this has got to be something that you've walked through. Most people don't choose that as a fun topic to just research and write on. So will you just tell us a little bit about you and your story around this to get us started today?
Sure. Yeah, I would say I probably started having some body image issues in high school, and I was very skinny and very self-conscious of like my chicken skinny legs. I was a pom-pom girl and would wear the little like cheerleader pom-pom uniforms. And I just remember always hoping it would be cold enough that I could put sweatpants on over, my legs and wear the turtleneck underneath the sleeveless shell, just because I was self-conscious. I just wished, that I was a little more filled out. And always was looking forward to, well, maybe next year I'll look like that girl,
Yeah.
So those were kind of the struggles in my early days. But then I would say, after I became a mom and had 4 children, so, late 30s, I felt like I started kind of swinging in the other direction of feeling like, wow, like this baby weight isn't coming off like I thought it would. And I used to be able to eat anything I want, and it seems like I can't do that anymore. And so then starting to feel self-conscious on the other side of, I don't look like I'm 22 anymore. So then just, dealing with that and kind of jumping on different bandwagons of, eating only this or cutting out this food group or doing this exercise plan. And all of those things just ultimately, not really solving the problem, but just kind of in this spiral of discontentment. So so that's kind of my story. And then, looking now to what does God really think about our bodies, and what is the biblical perspective that we should be having as believers?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people listening can relate to a lot of what you just said, maybe there's a lot of people listening who, like me, can't relate to the feeling too thin in college, but I know that there's listeners out there in high school. There's listeners out there who that's their story too. So I'm glad you have that perspective as well. You've kind of faced it from both angles. And then there's aging, right? There's all the weight stuff. Everyone talks about all the weight stuff. But I feel like maybe it's just because I've now reached a certain age. I feel like we're talking about aging more culturally than we ever have before. I don't, is that
Mm.
just my sense, or do you see that too?
No, I think it's definitely a huge topic. And there's so many options of how we
Yeah.
can look like we're not aging. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's definitely a huge part of our Western society.
Right. Why do you think we're so afraid of aging?
I mean, I think, there's all kinds of fears of what we're losing,
Mm,
that there's a fear of loss of I don't look the same as
mhm,
I did before. And there's a fear of, you know, will people still think I'm attractive? Will my husband still find me
mm,
attractive? Or if we're single, will I find a partner if I'm aging and, losing the beauty I once thought I had?
yeah,
And I think there's also the part of aging that's, the fear of losing our physical capabilities, of our bodies not working in the same way. Will I still be able to enjoy my life the same way if I'm having issues with my knees
yeah.
or, with different joints? Um, and even, will people value me the same way?
Mm,
I think there's definitely a view of looking at elderly people as not as valuable to society. And so fearing, maybe people won't think I'm worth talking to or investing in because I've grown older.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with that whole list. I think I would also add losing control, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like, if something came up that I wanted to fix about my
Yeah.
body or my life, right? In my 20s and 30s, I think there was definitely this perception that I could just fix it, right? I just had to do the thing and
Hmm.
fix it. And now it's like, oh, things are a lot more complicated. It's not that easy
Yeah,
anymore.
definitely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the loss of mobility one is one that I've been
Mm.
thinking about a lot recently because there was something I read or saw fly by me on Instagram. And maybe you've heard of this, like the how is it called? The aging test. Like if you can get up off the ground without using your hands or arms or elbows. Do you know about this?
I think my daughter was having me do this the
Yeah,
other night.
it was interesting, right? So you're sitting down on the ground, and I think you're sitting like cross-legged on the
uh,
ground, so crisscross applesauce, as they said in elementary school, right? And if you can stand right up, then like that's the ultimate. I don't know what it gets you, but like you're not going to die within 7 years, I think
yeah.
it said. But then it's like you lose points for every extra thing you need to help you. So like if you can
Hmm.
just do it with your elbow, then like you only use 1 point. But if you need like your hand and your elbow, or use 2 points or both hands, or if you need to like roll over and do it. And so
Yeah.
I found myself, just like you, I guess, found myself on the ground. And at first I saw it go by and I was like, oh, I can do that. Like, that's not a big deal. I can stand up. And then when I got on the ground, I was like, oh, whoa, I can't do that. That's hard. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to use my hand because it just doesn't. And it's kind of scary in some
Yeah.
way
Hmm.
to experience that. And then I think about my friends and family members who are further along than I am, 10, 20,
Mm.
30 years older. And I have new compassion for this reality that I don't think we fully understand in our 20s
Hmm.
and 30s
Right.
how aging changes things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And even like my husband and I joke, like I really hurt my neck a few weeks ago getting out of bed.
Sad injuries are the worst.
Which is so embarrassing to have to tell my doctor I ended up going to physical therapy. Um, and I'm like, actually, it's just getting out of bed. I somehow like really tweaked my neck muscles. And I feel like that stuff didn't happen quite as much,
Yeah.
in my 20s and 30s. And
Right.
now, I'm entering my late 40s and yeah, my body just, seems to not work quite as well as it used to.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do we do with that? Right? Like what is the Bible? What is scripture? What does the gospel speak to that? Because it is scary, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not supposed
Mhm.
to be afraid, we're not supposed to worry, right? Fear God alone. What do we do with that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bible really gives us an upside down vision of aging. So, we're in this world, in our society, we're, going to fear, we're going to do everything to turn back the hands of time, to not look the age that we are. The Bible celebrates aging.
Yeah.
I mean, it talks about gray hair being a crown of glory. And I mean, most of us, we see gray hairs and we're like, oh man, I need to cover that up.
Right. Right.
um, so I think it's really changing our perspective.
Mm.
And I think about it as, you know, it's instead of gazing so much in the mirror, it's gazing at God and
Yeah.
it's looking to Him to define what is beauty
Right.
and what matters most and what is life about. Is it about trying to look as young and fit as I can for as long as I possibly can?
Yeah.
Or is it about using our bodies to honor and glorify Him and to
Yeah.
put His beauty on display?
Yeah. And I think those messages get conflated sometimes, even in the church,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, well, you need to make sure that you look young and fit for Jesus. So then you're fit to
Yeah.
serve, right? And it's like, okay, but wait, what's my ultimate goal? Because I know just even comparing my 20s to now with
Mm-hmm.
4 teenagers and aging parents, like I try to work out, but I don't have the time
Right.
to do it like I used to do it. And I really
Mm-hmm.
have two choices, right? I can either shame myself that I don't have an
Mm.
hour and a half to spend at the gym,
Yeah.
or be like, okay, well, I've got things to do, and they're good things. They're things God has called
Right.
me to do. And so a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood is a win for the
Yes.
day. And it's not
Yeah.
failure because I am somehow not going to be able to keep my body looking like it did 20, 30 years ago
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not in the gym an hour. It is an upside down way of looking at things, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think about that too. I think, the older I get, the more it is like, well, if I want to keep looking or try to look a certain way, that requires a lot of time.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't have 2 hours to go to the gym every day and be, doing all these different exercises or working with a trainer or whatever it is to try to get my body in a certain shape.
Yeah.
There's other things that are more important in my
Yeah.
life and that I want to spend time on more than trying to sculpt a certain look.
Right. Right. And then you think about, and you alluded to this already, but it's like, how does God expect us to age?
Mm.
Right. It's like,
Mhm.
we have hints of how much he, thinks of aging, that he thinks it's a good thing, unlike our culture. Right.
Right.
But is God really like looking at me thinking, wow, Heather, it's a shame you couldn't still look like you did when you were 25? Or is it to what you said earlier that, like, maybe to a certain degree, I was able to rely on the way I looked in my teens, 20s, 30s, right, to get me by.
Mhm.
But now that I'm more mature, what should be beautiful about me should be that inner radiance, right?
Right.
Like I've had more time to work on the inner
Mhm.
beauty. Like what do you think about that? How do we not balance, because I hate that word, right? But how do we find rest
Hmm.
in pursuing the inner beauty instead of, or at the expense of, I shouldn't say at the expense of, but I think I've pursued outer beauty at the expense of inner beauty. I don't,
Mm.
but how do we find rest in that pursuit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, reminding us what scripture says. Like I think about the verse, 1 Timothy 4:8, where it says physical training is of some value, right? But spiritual training is of much greater value of pursuing godliness. And I love that because it reminds us the body is important,
Mm.
right? And it's not that we're saying throw exercise out the window. I love to exercise.
Mhm.
There's so many benefits we get from exercising, but it's of some value. It's
Mhm.
not the ultimate value,
Right.
right? The ultimate, what we're supposed to be doing is growing to be more like Jesus and growing to, produce the fruits of the Spirit by his grace in our life. I think about, I was in a Bible study with this older woman who talked about her mom when her mom was dying,
Mm.
and she was caring for her mom. Her mom was like in her 90s, and she said, my mom is a beautiful woman.
Mm.
And when she died, she said, I wrote her obituary and I listed the fruits of the Spirit
Mm.
to describe her, because
Yeah.
my mom was the only Bible that some people would ever know,
Mhm.
because she lived out her faith. She had a hard marriage. She responded in so much grace and love with living with a difficult man. And I thought that's true beauty,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure at 90 whatever years old, she didn't have flawless skin and look amazing, but she had a beautiful heart that
Yeah.
others could see and that put the gospel on display.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and just thinking about the ridiculousness of trying to look good in your coffin.
Mm, right.
And it's funny, I was talking with a friend who does some like work with hospice.
Mm,
And she was, kind of working on the nutrition side and was talking about the woman on hospice who said no to the chocolate cake because it would make her fat.
oh my.
And I'm like, oh
Oh,
Lord, help me. Like, I don't want to be there. like,
yeah.
like if,
Right.
when my days are that numbered, like I don't want to still be worrying about
Mm-hmm.
that. But then I read a quote, I think it was from John Piper, like you try to look beautiful so that people can stare at you for a second and then they throw dirt on top of your casket and they don't like see you like that again. And it's,
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak of it so glibly, but what a difference between making that the goal
Mm,
and what your friend experienced with her mom and having a room full of people at your funeral, at your celebration of life that are saying, wow, like she touched me in this way. Wow, she ministered to me in this way. Wow, like through her life, I saw this. She showed me who Jesus was.
mm.
Like what? Like that is a beauty goal right
Yes.
there.
Yeah. That's a great thing to think about. I think is, what do you want people to say? Do you want people to say, "Wow, she had amazing abs. She didn't have any wrinkles on her forehead." I mean, what is that worth? I
Right.
mean, that's just such a fleeting, trivial thing. But to have somebody comment on, yeah, she showed me Christ. She showed me what it meant to live my life for something bigger than myself.
Yeah. Well, and how much time do we spend trying to defy the ways we naturally age too, right? Because
Hmm.
I don't think it is normative for someone in their 70s or 80s to have abs. Like I
Right.
think the few people that can pull that off are of a rare breed,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like I think for most people, even if you're consistent in exercise, things change. They don't
Yeah.
firm and tighten and go
Hmm.
places like they used to, right? And yet, like we live in a culture that's pretty determined
Hmm.
to tell us we can keep that look. I mean, I don't know what your feed looks like, but my gracious, my Instagram feed is women over 50 in bikinis
Hmm. Yeah.
trying to sell me a program that is going to make me look like that at 60, which I don't think I looked like that at 30. So I don't know how I would look like that at 60, but somehow they're going to help me do that. And yet, like, it's tempting,
Yeah.
right? Why do you think it's tempting?
I think just because we're sinful creatures and we
Mm.
can just so easily want to glorify ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to look good on the beach. We want to be able to flaunt our good looks instead of flaunting the love of Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's easy to get wrapped into that. And I think, sadly, I think even in the church, I don't think there's a huge difference
Yeah.
with the world. I think there should be a bigger difference, but I think that as Christian women, it's still really easy to just get sucked into buy this cream or have this treatment done. It'll make you look 5 years, 10 years younger.
Yeah.
It's just easy to kind of go down that rabbit hole and get focused on the wrong things.
Right. Right. And I also think there's a little part of us that wants to be the special one,
Mm,
right? Like we want to defy aging,
yeah.
right? Like, ooh, maybe I could be the one that doesn't happen to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though, so I'm turning 50 this year, very soon. Even though like pretty much every single woman I know my age has a little belly pooch, like a belly pooch of some size, let me put it that
Yeah.
way. And every single woman I've had these conversations with is like, I don't know where this belly pooch came from. Like, it's a new thing, but like, what do I do with this belly pooch? And it's like, oh, you start to recognize, oh, this is a thing. You hit a
Mm,
certain age and you get a belly pooch. And even if you're doing all the same things, the belly pooch comes. And then someone says, you could be the one without a belly pooch.
mm,
You could take this special thing and do this special thing, and you can defy all odds. It's like I write about this in my 40-day body image workbook, but it's like the sneeches, right? Like the sneeches, some had stars on their bellies and some didn't have
oh,
stars. And they go
yeah.
through this long thing where the ones with the stars, are the special ones. So the other ones get stars, and then the star people aren't special anymore. And so it's this cycle of
Mm-hmm.
star putting on and star removal. And it's like we want so much to be special. But is that
Mm-hmm.
really where we should find our identity? Is that really what should make us special? What are we
Yeah.
missing?
Mm-hmm. I know it is. It's very easy to get wrapped up in that and finding our identity in the wrong things. And I think about that, like when we buy into all the treatments and all the workouts and all the things that are supposed to, turn back the hands of time, what are we really saying?
Yeah,
What are we really saying we find our hope in
yeah,
or we find our value in?
yeah,
Certainly not the things of eternity,
yeah.
because we're spending so much time on this outer shell that's going to just disappear someday.
Yeah, it's so tricky though, isn't it? Because I'm sure you know, and I think you write about this in your book, like lots of Christian women that are using Botox. I know there's Christian speakers
Mm-hmm.
that are
Mm-hmm.
using Botox and getting surgeries and they look younger. And these are our leaders, these are our examples.
Mm-hmm.
And they look like they did when they were 25 and 30.
Yeah.
And I think the subtle message there is like you're better off if you can
Mm-hmm.
keep your look, whatever it takes.
Right.
Like, wow, why? What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, buying into the lies of society that our value lies more in our appearance
Yeah,
than in our hearts and who we are as people.
yeah,
And I think it does, like for me at least, it is really hard as I get older. And yeah, I do notice famous Christian speakers that, are on my Instagram feed and they have good things to say, right?
yeah, sure.
They're teaching the word, but I'm like, how come they're like 10 years older than me and have not one wrinkle on their face?
Yeah,
And so, then it's, easy to fall into that comparison trap and feel like, man, I definitely look my age already.
mm, yeah,
um, and I think it kind of also can lend itself to like, well, should I be spending time and money on these things? Because
right,
so and so is.
right.
Um, but that's not where I want to go. That's not where I want to be. And I think about, I have two daughters. I have a college age daughter and a high school daughter. And I think about often what kind of example do I want to be to them? What do I want to show them is important in life? Do I want
Yeah,
them to see me spending all this time and money on trying to look a certain way or trying to look younger than I am?
yeah. Yeah, it is so tricky. I mean, and I'm always quick to say, like, if you're listening and you've gotten Botox and, the face lift and all those things, like, there's no judgment coming from here because, I bought those frowny things. I haven't used them yet, but, it's like a sticker that you put across your forehead.
Yeah,
And,
I've seen them.
overnight, it's supposed to work. I haven't, it's like the box is there and I'm just like waiting for a night when my husband's not home. So I can try it because I think he'd be pretty freaked out going to bed with me having a big sticker across my forehead. But, so there's no judgment, but it does, it, it's like, what do I really want from this? It does, I think, cause us to check our hearts. Like, why is it so scary that I would look older?
Mm-hmm.
What am I missing if that's what I'm afraid of? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, can you tell us more about your new book?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Beautiful Freedom: How the Bible Shapes Your View of Appearance, Food, and Fitness. So I always tell people this is not like a how-to book. This book does not contain recipes or exercise plans, but this is more of how should we look at these things? Because there's so many narratives coming at us
Yeah.
about beauty
Mm-hmm.
or about fitness or about what we should eat. So I feel like all these topics are intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people could probably write one whole book just on food, right? Or just on fitness. But my book, each chapter touches on one of these things. And I did that because I just feel like they all kind of blend together
Yeah.
in trying to respond to the same questions and fears with body image, with how we look, and what we're going to eat. So, I talk about different narratives on food that we hear, foods that are morally bad or foods that are good, or foods that are supposed to not give us cancer or,
Right.
keep us young forever, so all these different narratives. How do we respond? How do we think about that biblically? Like, what does the Bible have to say
Right.
about food? What does the Bible have to say about exercise and about aging? So in each chapter, I kind of go through those things with a hope that women would find freedom and find that Jesus came to set us free from all of these laws and restrictions that we want to place on ourselves, that we might be doing it for a good cause, right? Especially at the beginning, well, we want to be healthy, or we want, there's good reasons, but they can easily become so enslaving.
Yeah.
And then instead of giving us freedom, they can feel us or make us feel trapped,
Right.
that we have to keep these rules. We have to keep these, keep trying to do all the things to have our bodies look a certain way or feel a certain way. So I really hope that, the words I wrote will inspire women to look to the Lord and to look to his word to find freedom from all of these different issues.
Yeah, I love that. And I thought it was a great book. So you guys can go check it out. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? It's freedom. And, I just cannot believe that Jesus died on the cross, made that ultimate sacrifice for me so that I would live in bondage to my food rules and my exercise rules and my body fear and my
Right.
body shame, right? It's like, no, there's freedom there. So I love that message. Stacy, will you tell everyone where they can connect with you?
Yeah, you can find my writing at stacyreaoch.com, and Instagram at Stacy Reaoch, Facebook at Stacy Reaoch.
Awesome. And I'll put the links to all that in the show notes. Okay, final thought. What's one piece of advice you would give today to someone who's like, okay, I woke up this morning feeling pretty bad that I'm getting older. And now you're having this conversation, and I don't know, I've got my Botox appointment for later today. Maybe I'll go, maybe I won't go. But how can you encourage that woman listening that it's okay to age?
Well, I would encourage them to look to what the Bible tells us about aging, that it's a gift, that we can be like that, flourishing tree. Psalm 92 talks about it, that's still bearing fruit in old age. And that really we can have an imperishable beauty. Second Peter talks about an imperishable beauty, that we can actually grow more beautiful as we grow more like Jesus. We don't grow more beautiful by erasing our wrinkles or getting rid of all our gray hair, but we grow more beautiful as we become more like Christ. And I think that's a really hopeful message for all of us.
It absolutely is. And there's nothing that can take that imperishable beauty away. That's why it's called imperishable,
Right.
right?
That's right.
We don't lose it when we turn the big 60, 70, 80, whatever number you're facing next. I love that. Well, Stacy, thanks again for being on the Compare To show today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching or listening today. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.